Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, welcome to the first installment of Bouquet. I am so excited to be sharing, my thoughts with you guys and my opinion and what I'm doing today. So what I'm burning right here, I know, is some sage. Just to, clear the air, clear the vibes, make everyone and all spirits welcome, just to kick this off. And let's get started. So I know that it was kind of a positive welcome, and I wanted it to be, but I have a serious topic for this week, and the topic for this week is violence and terror in America, specifically over the past 2 years. And these 6 people that I'm going to be touching upon today may speak to you, may speak to myself, but they all have to do with mental health or mental illnesses. Now let me break that down. So my definition of mental health and mental illness is that it is an alternative reality or perspective or vision to reality, to society. It is an alternative or blind, or however you may want to call it, but it's an alternative view of reality. And in addition to that, it's like a different kind of consciousness. Like, it's difficult to describe and to pinpoint exactly, but where the line between mental health and mental issue or illnesses, where that line is kind of drawn. I'm no doctor yet, but I feel like in our society or in the time that we live in, or in general, I feel like the vast majority of people associate a mental illness with something negative and something dangerous. Whereas mental health is just like, I don't know, maybe the vision of yoga pops in your head or meditation pops in your head. But it's usually something very positive. Now, with these 6 people, I feel like, I don't know, let's have a debate about whether this is a mental health and or a mental illness pertaining to these 6 people that I'm going to be talking about today. So the first example that I have of a mental health and a mental illness issue is of this past year, Jeremy Christian. Jeremy Christian was accused of stabbing 3 men, killing 2 of them, and these 3 men were trying to come to the defense of 2 young women who to Christian looked like they were Muslim. Now, this story for me is definitely a case of just blatant hatred. He's quoted in court saying, "You call it terrorism, I call it patriotism. You hear me? Die." That's a pretty strong statement to be making, and this is just, to me, a pure case of nurture over nature, for sure. And my thoughts about it are that with all of these stories today, there is a definite display of what I was saying earlier about an alternative perspective or vision on reality and on society. And these 6 people have different reasons for doing what they did. My thoughts for Jeremy Christian is that he committed these 2 murders and injured, other people based on maybe it was like a protection of his race. Like, I feel like there are a lot of people in this country that feel like America is deteriorating in the sense of we're losing ourselves and we're losing the pureness of who we are. And with that being said, maybe Jeremy Christian thought that like he was doing some kind of cleansing. I'm not too sure. But as I'm gonna say this a lot, but when it's at the expense of someone's life or lives, there are now families broken. There are now, there's mourning going on. And with all of these stories, it's something different. And I chose these people very specifically because I wanted to talk about very different kinds of alternative perspectives. So now, with that in mind, I think I should be more specific and say that I believe Jeremy Christian was trying to protect his country. I think a part of it was protecting his race, but I think the majority of it was protecting his country, which, is very sensitive, is a very sensitive topic currently and, in this country. It's always been. But with this next person, it was another case of just blatant hatred. This next person is which also occurred this past year in 2017, and the person is James Harris Jackson. Now, this story surprised me because as a born New Yorker, shout out Brooklyn, when I had no idea that this story had happened until I researched it, and that could be due to a different amount of factors, but this is one of the stories that hit home for me. James Harris Jackson was convicted of murdering a 66-year-old man in the middle of Manhattan on, I believe it was the morning or the afternoon. He is originally from, not originally, but he was staying in Baltimore, Maryland. He was a member of the Army, and it's said that he was, looking for his place, and, since he was new to Baltimore and whatnot. People have mentioned that he is quite distant and just avoids contact with other people, not very sociable, and whatnot. So, he made it clear to investigators and police officers that he despises black men. And in particular, his most, annoying offense to him is when black men are with white women. Now, I think that is from purely or partly due to him trying to protect the purity of America, but more so the pureness of his race. That's something that I think is, again, another stark example of a mental illness and a mental health issue. It is something that doesn't happen on its own. No baby is born with, those conditions and such violence and anger and just all of the things that come with it. So, and that makes me also question, like, I'm curious, I'm very curious to know, what does he think about black women? Like, are we just an idol piece to, fantasize about? Are we just, just a woman, and we are, the lowest of the low because I'm black and a woman? Like, I'm so curious about these things, but, this is a definite mental illness, in my opinion. Yeah. I also think it's a mental illness issue because, and not this is not like my sole reason, but it's just an open case of a mental illness issue. It's so open in the fact that his defense lawyer is quoted saying that Jackson has, obvious psychological issues. So that was just very interesting to me to see how open the case was. I can't describe it any other way. I'm thinking too hard about it, but that's just what I think. Okay, so the next person on my list is Omar Mateen, the Orlando, Florida nightclub shooter at Pulse. Just as with Jackson, the previous story, this one hits home for me as well because it is the LGBTQ community that lost lives that night, and I am a part of that community. It's unfortunate because, well, it might be unfortunate. It might be, it might be a heavier burden, but with the past two stories, there was a clear reason why those murderers did what they did. It was a very clear reason. But with Mateen, there's only speculations and assumptions. Speculations being, whether it be about his sexual orientation. There were claims that he committed the crime because he was diagnosed supposedly with HIV from a in the closet gay partner, and that's one speculation. The other the other perspective is that the claim came from him, is that he did what he did and committed the crime because of an ISIL commander that had passed away in Iraq due to a bombing, I believe. And that's the other side of it. But just, going through what I know about this story, the thought still came to my mind throughout all of my research that these families and these loved ones that died that night, their loved ones will never have closure. They will that is just run through my mind so many times, and I feel for those loved ones. I really do. And for those of you who are affected by it, I'm sorry. My love is with you. And on top of that, up until the Las Vegas shooting, this mass shooting was considered the largest in American history. That is within 1 year that this has occurred. America, we need to do better. And some of us act like there's nothing that can be done, and I've seen the ridicule that people have gotten for speaking up, but we have to change the gun laws in this country. And we can't, no matter which side we're coming from, we can't continue losing lives. We can't.